Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and tonight I want to welcome Paul Simon to the show. We are going to take a look at the band Shaw Blades. We're talking Jack Blades from Night Ranger, Tommy Shaw from Styx. Hey, both gentlemen were in Damn Yankees, and we're going to look at the record Influence for 2007. Who knew they put out a record in 2007? Well, we're going to look at it tonight, and we're going to have a nice discussion, so let's get started.
Crank up those headphones. It's time for Grant's Rock Warehouse.
Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and I want to welcome Paul Simon to the show tonight. The last time we saw Paul, we were doing a Styx episode with Todd Evans, but he's here tonight, and you know what we're going to talk about? Well, obviously you do, because you've already seen the graphics. We are going to talk about Shaw Blades. Tommy Shaw, Jack Blades. Tommy Shaw from Styx and Jack Blades from Night Ranger. They put out 2 albums. Now, they put out that original album, Hallucination, in 1995. But we're actually here to talk about the little-known second album that came out in 2007. Now, that's a big span of time. But they put out a covers album called Influence in 2007. Came out on VH1 Classic Records. But both Paul and I love, well, I'm a big Tommy Shaw fan from way back. That's a whole other show. I appreciate Jack Blades, but Tommy Shaw, I think, is the bomb, and I've been a big fan ever since I was 13. So tonight we're going to talk about Influence, the covers record. And while we're here, Paul, I just want to welcome you to the show. It's nice to have you on today. First time Thanks, Paul sir. And I have done a show together. You know, usually we have Todd Evans. Well, we've only done 2 shows, people. But tonight, Paul is here, and we're going to talk about Shaw Blades. Welcome, Paul. How are you? Nice to see you.
Doing great. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. And it's going to be nice to say great things about Tommy Shaw. Since we were talking about here last time, it was a little bit of a shadow or a pall over the episode. But this is great because I love this album. So a lot of good things to say about it.
And if anybody is interested, the Styx Kilroy Was Here album, you can see that down in the link. We were kind of a bit mixed on that, you know. Some of us thought the Tommy Shaw material was great. Some of us didn't feel it was as great as what had come before. But you cannot. Tommy's absolutely brilliant musician, great guitar player, absolutely brilliant. What he did for Styx, unbelievable. The Shaw Blades materials also very good. And a lot of people, when the first album came out in 95, I was totally on board. I was looking for Tommy Shaw material, and it came out, and I was blown away by that first record. It's a lot more rootsy, much more, I don't want to say John Cougar-like, but the producer is, Don Guillaume, who produced John Cougar Mellencamp. So it's along that, should I use the word Americana? I guess so. It's much more rootsy, much more rootsy than you're used to. It's not your traditional Styx. It's not your Night Ranger.
But and wasn't the drummer?
Cartellone was the drummer. Yeah. So it's great. Steve Smith also played drums. So it's kind of that lineup of Damn Yankees. But I think that whole album came about because didn't this fulfill the contract maybe? Something about that Damn Yankees catalog, and they didn't get to make that other record, or this might have supposed to be that third record. I don't know. Maybe someone in the comments knows.
That material did get picked apart, that I know.
But I couldn't hear this as being a Damn Yankees album. No. But there's something to it. I'm not sure. But we're here to talk Influence. So were you like a big Tommy Shaw fan, or I know you're a big Styx fan?
Big
But
Night Ranger fan, actually. I
and
was a
Night Ranger fan. Okay.
so this was to me musically, this is a marriage made in heaven
Okay.
because their voices, their harmonies. When I think of, see, I heard their voices together anyway because when you talk about the stuff they did with Vince Neil, like they worked on Exposed with him, so you hear You're Invited but your friend can't come. That's all them. No offense to Vince Neil. But even the single version of You're Invited but your friend can't come before Exposed came out, before Steve Stevens put his playing on that, that was Shaw Blades. Listen to the choruses. You can't miss, once you know what you're listening for, you can't miss them. It's sort of like Lukather playing on everything in the 80s. When you hear it, there it is. So they worked with Jude Cole on Start the Car. They worked with Ozzy Osbourne on something off Osmosis, I believe, but I'm probably already ahead of Hallucination by then. Whole World's Fallen Down. Worked with Alice Cooper, It's Me off Last Temptation. Worked with Aerosmith, not the big single off of Armageddon, the other one. Whole World's, no, that's Ozzy. But at any rate, the other Aerosmith song off the Armageddon soundtrack, that's Shaw Blades. Mm-hmm. So they keep popping up, and much like script doctors in Hollywood, they're writing stuff for people and then going, here you go, writing songs for people. So they're popping up everywhere. But when you hear those harmonies, it's them unmistakably. Mm-hmm. So them doing an album and then a tour, and then by the time we get to Influence, I'm as big a fan of them working together, if not more, than Damn Yankees.
Right.
Damn Yankees was, I saw them 6 times on 2
tours.
I
never saw them.
Oh, I went statewide and then some. I went multi-state to catch them. So yeah, I was very, very happy when they were doing material together.
So I wonder what, maybe you know this answer, but Hallucination came out in 95. Influence came out in 2007. That's a big span of time. So was it just the fact that maybe they wanted to work together again, but maybe their schedules didn't allow it, and then something opened up? Is that what happened in this situation?
It was scheduling, because between the Styx stuff, the Night Ranger stuff, I don't remember which albums came when, but if you check the discographies schedule wise, it pretty much does line up where, okay, I'm free, you're free, let's do this.
Right.
And I do know, I did read when I was doing some digging for this episode, I did read that now, of course, when I try and think about it, I'm not going to get it. It was recording a song for a project of Jack's where they were doing a cover of something else. And they said, hey, that's what it was. They said, who the Beach Boys and the Beatles are getting all the love for doing harmony in rock vocals, but what about ELP? What about Seals and Croft? What about Mamas and the Papas? Let's do some of these songs together to bring attention to the harmonies and the influences, hence the name Influence, that's where they got the title, to show this is what they listen to. And it's funny, if you check the ages, Tommy Shaw was born in 53, Jack Blades was born in 54, so they both graduated high school, I think, in 72. And I checked the dates on every song on Influence, and it's from 64 or 65 up to 75. So it's in that perfect age range to be their biggest musical influences. Because Rubicon started in 75 for Jack Blades, and 75 is when Tommy joined Styx.
So all these songs, these are all songs that they picked that they, the concept was to pick these songs that really meant something to them, and you have to admit, it starts off with a bang. Who would have ever thought, well, think about it. You've got Seals and Cross, you've got the Zombies. Yes, Simon and Garfunkel. You mentioned Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Mamas and the Papas, but you never really think about that. Maybe you think Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades could pull this off, but they do. And I'll tell you, Summer Breeze leading off the track listing.
strong.
Strong.
Strong. And the instrumentation, we're going to be talking about the harmonies going track by track. We're going to be talking about the harmonies, but the instrumentation they pick on these, and it's not, I'm not going to sit here and say 10 out of 10. I've got a couple things either that bug me or that I'll be the first to say, maybe it works for other people. It didn't work for me, but it's not on Summer Breeze. Summer Breeze, they made some slight changes, but nothing, no radical change. It's a little safe, maybe, but it works really well. They did a great job of staying faithful to the original while still making it not sound, and I'm going to try and avoid this word with this era a lot, but cheesy. They avoided sounding too cheesy or sweet poppy.
Yeah, this record's not cheesy at all. It's basically, well, they love these songs. They love these vocals. They love these tracks, and it's like their love. I don't know. What do you want to say? It's
love
like
note to their
love note. Yeah. But Summer Breeze, I think, is top notch. Yeah, I do notice that when like during the verses, they're just like a tad bit, but you don't want to copy the track 100. You got to make it your own track, you know? But I can see why Summer Breeze was the lead off, because it's stunning. It sounds great. I kept thinking, wow, you could release that as a single, 2007, it'd be great. So anyway, if you want, just go through the tracks, and we're going to keep it loose like we always do here in the Warehouse. But no one's talking influenced by Shaw Blades, but we are tonight. So there you go.
Time of the Season is the second track, Zombies. The notes I put down here, the organ is much less prominent. They use keys instead. It does work. Vocals are strong. You're going to hear this over and over again. It's no shock. It's them.
Right. Yeah.
Using a wah-wah pedal on a guitar to replace the organ to good effect. This song relied, obviously this is a classic. The one change or difference I noted from the 68 original to their version, there was maybe a little bit of a sultriness or a sexiness to the original that they aren't looking to copy. But even though it's not there and going with the wah-wah pedal rather than the organ, it still works. In other words, they don't, like we just said, they don't fall into cheesy. I'm amazed that they pulled that off. It's still a great cover. It's note perfect. There isn't, even the songs I am critical of on here, they're never off note. It's them. So credit where credit's due on that. But it's still, their version does still work. And I didn't think that was possible to do this song, to take it out of the era of that late 60s, do an update, have it still be faithful to the original while giving it an update. And they did it. So the only criticism that I think could be leveled, maybe it's a little safe, but that doesn't make it bad.
Well, that song is so identifiable, and that's zombie stamp. Think about it. It's a perfect pop tune. During that era, the Zombies, this was their last hurrah. They thought, well, we're just going to do what we want to do. This is the last record we're going to do. They just kind of gave it their all. And it's hard to even fathom really someone even doing a copy of it, doing a take on it. It's like some of the Beatles stuff. I don't like Beatle covers, but this is a pretty strong song. And boy, you'd have to have some, major balls to do it. I would say that to pull it off, and they do.
Yes.
Maybe it's a little safe. It's a beautiful rendition. I will give you that. And what can you say? Great track. So what about, go ahead.
Takes us to your move from Yes.
Talk about a bold move. Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades tackling Yes. Okay.
All right. So to let this out early, I've got a tie for best, my favorite track on the album, one of Tommy's and one of Jack's. This is second place.
Okay.
This is second place. Tommy absolutely nails John Anderson's vocals. to be able to say that sentence is that's a strong imprimatur.
I think that this is the strongest vocal track for Tommy Shaw on the record. If you're a Tommy Shaw fan and you know what a great vocalist he is, I swear to God, you got to listen. You've got to check this out. You have to check this out. Absolutely brilliant. Just a beautiful, and think about it. This is 2007. How old Tommy's what at this point? If I only could do math, it would help. But he's not a young man.
Go to 07, so yeah.
But he still sounds great today, and he absolutely sounds wonderful in this track.
Yes, agreed completely. And then having both Tommy and Jack doing Chris Squire and Steve Howe's vocals, it's beautiful. The harmonies in this song, I told you we'd be saying this a lot, but they absolutely pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
They do it. The instrumentation was very carefully picked. They did the original Proud. It's full bodied. When I had it turned up, it shook my living room, and in all the right ways. Like the no distortion, it was booming where it was supposed to be booming. The vocal layering is trademark Shaw Blades. So, like I said, in my opinion, including the fact that I have a tie for first, this is the second best song on the album.
And I want to mention this because this was recorded in their home studios, Jack's barn in Sonoma and Tommy's house in LA. But I was going to mention that you mentioned how great it sounds. This doesn't sound like some home-baked record. I'm sure both of these gentlemen have pretty nice studios in their house. I think it sounds as a record, and you can crank this record up, and it sounds really good. So there's that. Glad you mentioned that.
Instrumentation is when they're looking to be faithful to the original material, they do it very well with the instruments. Not just the vocals, with the instruments. And when they're looking to put their own spin on it, we'll say when it works and when we feel it doesn't or whatever.
Right.
But with this one particularly, total standout. Total stand. You can't do the song half-assed.
No.
Because the minute you trip up, you're going to fall on your face. And they not only never do, this makes people stop and go, wow, they did it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Totally 100%, Paul. I agree with you.
Yeah. Now,
go ahead. Now, I'm not sure what that means.
4, which brings us to track 4, I Am a Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, so they're taking risks. I'll be objective first. Simon and Garfunkel, not easy. You got 2 versions. You could be, or no, I'm sorry, 2 versions of Sounds of Silence. I'll get to that in a second. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of this one at all. I know I've read in the liner notes what they were trying to do. In the liner notes, they quote Jack as saying, Tommy wanted to do this in the style of the Goo Goo Dolls or the Foo Fighters. It seemed natural for the song. Okay. They're the professionals. I'm not. So what I'll say is this doesn't work for me at all. This is not a perfect album. This one falls flat every time. I've tried over and over to like it. I can't get into it. They do this na 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 thing in the chorus that really doesn't fit for me at all.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
It doesn't work for me. People can have different opinions. Some people can't stand, here we go. Some people can't stand the Guns N' Roses cover of Sympathy for the Devil. I love it because it sounds evil. It sounds like it's a song about the devil's supposed to sound. I Am a Rock. I think Simon and Garfunkel, I think that era, I think, what is that, 65?
66.
Sound is supposed to have. This ain't it.
Well, I never ever thought of doing a Simon and Garfunkel song in the style of the Goo Goo Dolls.
So maybe I'm not open-minded enough to catch that.
Well, I don't think so. I think this has a problem. But hey, they gave it a shot.
Yes. Hey, they're taking risks, and good for them.
I mean, this has 12. Well, it only has 11 tracks. The Japanese version does have.
We'll get to that one. I made sure I listened to that one too.
Okay. All right. So anyway, I don't think it works as I 100% agree.
Yeah. And even taking that is the one note I made is the two different versions, if I've got this right. The original acoustic version versus the this was from Paul Simon's songbook, wasn't it? From 65?
Originally, that's what it was. And then they redid it in 66. So
that note does make sense to me then. Okay. I think they did take the strum tempo and stuff from that original. And so I saw where the influence was. I was trying to, even though I didn't like it, I was trying to push through it. But it's like I could see what they were trying to do, but I couldn't get behind it. So,
yeah.
The old dress.
Hey, you can't win them all,
Yeah.
All right.
So that they could, they didn't stop to realize whether or not they should. So,
some of these acts you get wrapped up in the project, and I don't know. Don't forget, they probably didn't have a producer on this. They produced it. There's no one here say, "Hey, gentlemen, I'm the Rock is not really working too well." So.
This will be the second time you and I have talked about an album like that now that I think about it. That was one of my criticisms of Kilroy was here. They need someone to rein him in.
Yeah, that Kilroy, that's a whole other.
Yeah, we've already had that conversation.
We had that conversation. Check it down in the link below and check our episode on Kilroy. All right, so what do you think about Lucky Man? How's that hit you?
That is one of my ties for first. That is now you chose your move as Tommy's best, and I definitely will give you that. This is my pick for Tommy's best.
Okay.
So written by Greg Lake at age 12, easy to picture a 18-year-old Tommy listening to this. Beautiful harmonies, faithful instrumentation. Sounds like they went to great lengths to achieve the Emerson Lake and Palmer sound. Which again, coming after I Am a Rock being so jarringly different, this was not only welcome, but stunning in how beautiful it sounds, how faithful it sounds. There's an underlying distorted guitar that works, that's not as in your face as I Am a Rock had. Like I'm a Rock's got this distortion where you're just going, why did you do that? They use a very subdued underlying distorted guitar here, but it works. They used the guitar to replace Emerson's Moog spirals at the end,
and it totally works.
And it works.
It totally works.
It works.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is in my tie for first. They kept it passionate without being showy at the end, and that's a trick that took absolute talent to pull off, and they did.
And that just jumped out for me too, because I listened to that guitar part, and I'm going, oh. Ooh, well executed, gentlemen.
Yes.
Of course, Tommy can play anything. So
yeah.
Well, it could be Jack. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm assuming that's Tommy playing that. But actually, that's a great track.
They have some live performances are on YouTube of the bar shows they did. I know that they played. I think it was Joe's here in Chicago, where I'm at. Mm-hmm. On that tour, which I missed because I had to work, but they were just doing little bar shows, which I also saw. I was reading up on some of the reviews of the shows, and they played "Fooling Yourself," which someone had footage of, sounded great, played high enough, and then someone said, and I still haven't found footage. So anyone in the comments, if you have footage of this, get a hold of us. They did Haven't We Been Here Before, Jack and Tommy. Really? If I could get my hands on that, that's something I'd want to hear. And going back to our conversation, I'm sorry to keep referencing it.
Oh, you're right.
You can tell Tommy didn't hate the song if he and Jack were playing it live in 07. So, which is excellent, because that's my favorite song off the album. So,
but I'd love to hear that.
It's a beautiful song. I would love to hear their version.
So the next track we've got The Sound of Silence. So they're trying yet another Simon and Garfunkel. How do you feel that they did with that?
Better. This is the one where I broke it up between the 64 and 65 versions. Owes its vocal inspiration more to the original acoustic 64 Sound of Silence, no second S, because the vocals are more prominent in the Shaw Blades mix, but has more familiar added instruments of the 65 Sounds of Silence, where Tom Wilson added the instruments in. So I think it works better. I still don't love it. It's not a 10 out of 10 for me, but it does. It uses enough of the influence of the original to work for me as a cover. I personally think, I don't want to say they could do better because I don't mean that. They did a good job. I think it could have been, I think it would have worked better if they would have been a little bit more faithful to the original on this one, but that might be a personal preference. I'm not saying I'm right.
Well, at least with Sounds of Silence, for me, I mean, I think their version's fine.
Yeah.
But if you listen to that original version and it's just so powerful and iconic, and for someone to even do their own interpretive version of it, it's hard for me to fathom, though I think they do a commendable job. They can't do it exactly, but I could probably hear them doing it. I think they have the vocal chops that they could have.
And that's why I keep jumping onto the live stuff I did see on YouTube. Doing it live, they did it fantastic. I think, here you go. I think this, on the album, I think they overproduced it. Okay. That's what I think I'm trying to say. Because
you'd like it a lot more stripped down, like the live, two guitars, just their vocals, playing the songs.
Yes.
God, I think that if they would have recorded that record like that,
this song at least, because other things benefited from the production. Your Move, they needed the vocal layers. A couple songs that we're about to get to, they needed the vocal layers. This is not one of them. I mean, they did, the vocals sound beautiful on this version. I definitely want to make sure I say that.
But they could have, think about it, Paul, they could have stripped it down, just acoustic guitars, someone playing bass. They could layer the vocals.
It would have worked better. It would have gone from a B to an A. There you go. I don't dislike this version, especially, I keep going back to I'm a Rock and I need to let it go. But no, this is a good version.
Right.
But we've seen what they can do with greatness. So this is a B on an A album, a B plus even on an A album.
Okay.
So I'm not saying this is bad. This sure isn't a failure. It's not even a dark mark on it. It's just it's really good among a bunch of other great ones.
Okay. That's totally fair. I get it. I totally get it. All right, let's move on to the next track, California Dreamin'. What's your thoughts?
They even say in the liner notes they didn't think they could pull it off without female vocalists. They did. This song always had a bit of a, I remember the song when I was a kid hearing this, and just, this is going to sound completely out of left field.
No.
A sense of foreboding, just with the way how haunting the harmonies are, and I loved it. I watched horror movies as a kid, all that. I loved that it sounded so haunting. I love their version. It's fantastic. I can't believe they did as good a job. I knew they could pull off the this is another one where I knew they could pull off the vocal harmonies, but that's talking in notes. They pull off the feeling of it. They pull off the mood of the song. This really works. This is another one where I was skeptical before I heard it. And when I heard it, I went, holy cow, they did it.
They did it. Well, the song, I know I keep saying iconic, and some of these songs, think about it. The 1960s production, I think, has a lot to do with everything. You take California Dreamin' out, yes, great song, great harmonies, but my God, this is one of those singles where everything comes together, like everything lines up. you take it out of context or take one of those elements, it might fall apart. I mean, yeah, the song's great, but to really pull this off,
it's about
I mean, there's a
lightning.
lot of tracks on here, though. Kind of what I've been saying. These are iconic songs that you can listen to them and you think, well, could someone really do their own version and pull it off? I don't know. But this is definitely one of those songs that it is stuck in 19. Well, it says it was written in 63, but it came out in, I think that was in 66.
66, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because John Phillips had written it a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I dig this version, don't get me wrong, but man, that is a hard one to do. And you remember the Beach Boys on that comp, on Made in USA comp. In fact, it was a single. They did a version of California Dreamin' in the 80s, and it wasn't too bad. That one I didn't mind either. So I guess maybe I'm just talking. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, kids, but man,
okay. But you're also talking about the Beach Boys. So you're taking another truly gifted group. You're not like I won't throw anybody under the bus, but it's not like you're grabbing the garage band down the street and saying, even they did it. No, you're saying the Beach Boys. So yeah, they can pull. And the notes I put on here as far as instrumentation goes, updated guitar and instrumentation included a muted, distorted guitar, but the acoustic strumming is more prominent in the mix, and that's what keeps it faithful through most of it. I do miss the alto flute, and I'm not wild about replacing it with the electric guitar, but that's a personal thing. It's not ineffective or distracting, still very strong.
No, I think this track's great. I think they pulled it off.
Yeah.
There could be maybe a couple of tweaks in the arrangement, but oh my god, not vocally though, they did it.
I think me missing the alto flute is simply nostalgia. I'm not, this is an A track. This is not a B. This is an A track.
It's an A track. Oh, no doubt. Yeah. And you know, like the next track, the Hollies, it was nice to see. Now, of all the Hollies songs, I'm surprised they picked on a Carousel, but I can think vocally how that would work for them. But you could have picked a lot of Holly songs, but then again, this is an ongoing theme. The Hollies had vocal chops. You know, we mentioned the Beach Boys. Well, obviously, Mamas and the Papas, but the Hollies, you know, Graham Nash and Alan Clark. I mean, that vocal blend that they had. Oh, but it's a great track. What's your thoughts on this one?
Now, this one, I had to do some digging. I wasn't exposed to the Hollies when I was younger, except for, oh God,
Bus Stop.
He Ain't Heavy, brother.
Long Dark Woman.
Yeah. But I mean, minimal exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew good harmonies. I knew, but not the whole catalog, not any deep cut of any kind. And even so like heard of them and, oh, that's them. Oh, okay. That's the most I could have said about them. So what I put on here, they were not my bag, but I like the Shaw Blades version. Comparing the two when I did, because I made playlists of both and then I put them together. So I kept listening to one after the other. It's a thicker sound than the original. So nothing that would bother a purist or a Hollies fan that I could tell. Killer harmonies as usual. Mm-hmm. They make it sound easy deceptively, but incredibly intricate. And then when I read the liner notes on the CD, they said it was difficult to not be, quote, too in tune because the Hollies sound was distinct and not auto-tune perfect because of the technology of the day and their sound. So I love the fact that they're saying, in other words, it wasn't perfect, but not through their imperfections. It was just simply, it's a raw, excellent, like beautiful vocal, but not easy to replicate that distinct. It'd be like trying to sing, I'll go to hell for even making this comparison, but someone can't sing Michael Stipe like Michael Stipe. Bad example, but you follow me. Yeah. Very distinct vocal.
Well, it's like Chrissie Hynde.
Great example.
I mean, I love Chrissie Hynde, love the Pretenders, But try to do a cover version and make it work.
Exactly.
You never hear any hardly.
Yeah.
Band I was in the 80s, we did do My City Was Gone, and that seemed to work okay. We had a female vocalist, and it was all right. It was a fun groove to play, but normally Chrissie Hynde would be in that same Michael Stipe category, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. When they're so distinct that you're either copying, if you copy badly, you're going to sound like a parody. And if you copy too much, you're just copying and you're not doing your own version. So again, that's why I said deceptively. They make it sound deceptively easy, because it's not easy to sound that good and like them. And I'm not a Hollies fan, but just listening to what I did listen to, I'm like, that's a real trick to pull that off.
I think with the Hollies, they were much more of a singles band than an album band. And all you need is just like one good comp. I mean, Paul, I don't know if you're an LP guy or a CD guy, but there is a CD that if you follow the Steve Hoffman forums, they talk a lot. You know, you can go there and learn quite a bit what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. But there's a Hollies comp that's like 20 greatest hits or something that's got smokestacks. It was a European comp that came out in the 80s. It's got like smokestacks. You wouldn't think that it's a horrible album cover. But the CD, it came out like on EMI.
Yeah.
It's absolutely stunning. Those Hollies records were so well recorded. And those singles, their singles just were, they just were above anything. You know what I mean?
I do.
All you need is a good singles comp.
Vinyl versus CD and digital versus analog. I was trained on analog, so it's a conversation for another episode for sure. But
that CD though sounds great.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because that's not normally my stance. So I'm glad to hear that. Good.
Well, you know, that's a whole other show.
Exactly.
But I'm just saying, if anybody's wanting to get into the Hollies, I'm just saying, don't buy the records, just get a good comp. And that's all you'll need. And they were a singles band. It was the 60s. Yeah. They weren't the Beatles, you know.
When I was doing the research for this, like, okay, I put album and year of release and all that. And the further down the track list I got, the more I kept saying single. Like,
yeah.
Oh, got it.
But think about it. That's probably, they were such a singles band. That's probably where Tommy Shaw, Jack Blades, I'm not exactly sure who brought this to the table, but it'd be right up their alleys when they were kids. I can hear how Tommy would dig this.
Yeah.
You know, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Now we come to Dirty Work. My favorite on the album.
Your favorite?
By far. Favorite. I can't say best. I don't do that. My favorite on the album.
So what is it about it? What is it that you like?
It just, where do I start? That's why I bought the album.
Well, for one, it's a great piece of songwriting. The original that's on the first Steely Dan album.
Yes.
That is my favorite song on the track. I mean, on the whole record. Favorite track on the album. It's that. You know, Donald Fagen's not singing it, but gosh, help me. Who was the vocalist on that?
Hold on.
David Palmer was great.
Yes.
And again, another track. How can you improve that original track?
Here's where I may alienate a few people. To me, they did. I love their version. I love it. It's got the right amount of, like, I'll get a teeny bit personal. I went through a difficult situation at one point in my life around a certain time.
Like we all do.
Right. And this song actually was like the proverbial brick to the head to get out of the bad situation.
Gotcha.
So, but the thing is, this song, much like, say, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, It's the kind of song where you need to hear it at the right time, but their version, it captures the essence of the song so perfectly. This is another one, like we said with a couple of these already, but Your Move, Lucky Man, where California Dreamin', where they so nail what Steely Dan was doing back in 72. They didn't just go out and record the song. Like, okay, this is the note they hit, Palmer hits this, Vegas playing that. They did the song. This sounds, you feel it. This is rock and roll. They did this. That's why I love this so much. This is my other tie for first place, personal tie, not saying objective best.
Yeah.
My favorite of Jack vocal on the album. And I'm a Jack
think
fan.
It's one of the highlights.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a lot of highlights. Look, we're being truthful here. There's a lot of highlights.
Yeah.
But this really does stand up. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Buy this. This is the one to me that says buy this album. We said a bunch of other ones, but for me, this is buy this album.
It just makes me wonder there's such great material on this record. I never saw it out in the stores. You could never get it. I remember for a while I was trying to locate it. Okay. It was probably, I don't know how long ago, but I was looking for it, and it was back when CDs were like still in the 2000s, when they're going for more money. This record, this was kind of expensive. There weren't any around. I could never get it. I just don't get it. This is why I like doing these type of shows, to throw this stuff out there and give these records that no one really knows about and love. Yeah, this is one of them. And Dirty Work Alone, the version, Shaw Blade's version, holy mackerel. I'm just saying. It makes me excited. I don't know. I like it. I could talk this all day.
Yeah. So
great track.
Okay. Speaking of songs that difficult to pull off, for what it's worth, Buffalo Springfield. They do. I mean, you've got Neil Young's guitar harmonics recreated beautifully. The vocals work. Very faithful. Little bit at the end was kind of, improv is the wrong word. They do this, Tommy goes off on this something towards the end that this is another, not even B plus. I'd almost call it an A minus. But it makes me go like, oh, you guys, you're right there. And then maybe it's just me. But the point is, this is a difficult damn song to stay faithful to the feel of. You can hit the notes, but keep in the mood of it, and they do it.
I totally agree. Think it's another yet. This whole album is a challenge.
Yes.
Pull these off, because they're, like I said, they're so iconic for what it's worth, for God's sakes. It captures that moment, 1967, the unrest, on the Sunset Strip, that whole thing at Pandora's box, the whole how can you replicate it?
And these guys in 2007 are channeling this. They're pulling it off. That's amazing to me. You've got the vocal talent to do it, but you've also got the musical talent, and self-produced. You're able to recreate that feel in the whole song. That's not easy.
Nope, but they did it.
Yeah. And I have to throw this out, if nothing else, to make you laugh and a few of my friends from my channel. I have to say, compared to other covers that exist out there, for example, off the album Feedback, this one works. That one doesn't. Just my opinion.
Well,
not to speak ill of my my roots.
But Paul, you just might have Broke the internet right there. Maybe. I think there's probably going to, when this airs, it just might.
I like the Shaw Blades version of For What It's Worth more than I like the Rush version of For What It's Worth. It's more faithful. I'm not saying the Rush version's bad. All Rush is good.
They have their own interpretation,
Precisely. This one just makes me feel more like I'm back. No, I'm not. I'm old. I'm not that old. Well, I could feel where it came from and where the roots of this song are more in this version.
But if you think about Jack Blades, you think of Tommy Shaw, you think of their songwriting, you think of their vocal talents, you think of what they've done, what they've produced. They're not so pigeonholed as opposed to Rush. Rush, or I'm going to say, are a bit stereotyped. I remember when Feedback came out.
Yeah.
And they were going to do a covers record. I went, is that possible? Yeah. It doesn't seem like it doesn't. It just seems uncharacteristic of them. So it's like, what? Can they do that? Hey, they did it. Mixed results, but
mixed results.
I applaud them for doing it.
Absolutely.
Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades are much more suited for this. They're just, agreed. I don't want to say that Rush is, they're stereotype. It's hard to think them doing something like that, Yeah. No, I agree with that. That's all. They did it. I don't have any issues with it, but it's different. It's an acquired taste. Yeah. I applaud them.
Yes.
But, this really hits it out of the park. Yeah, there's a couple tracks maybe, but hey, just saying. Anyway, go ahead. So For What It's Worth,
The Dance With Me,
Orleans. And now that,
don't know. This was another one I walked in clueless.
But you were familiar with Dance with Me though, right? It's like a yacht rock.
It. That's the most I could. Yeah, yacht rock. Closest I came to yacht rock was listening to Kenny Loggins as a kid.
Well, this is very Kenny Loggins like. So, and if
this
they're
one,
doing,
I knew the song, I'd heard it as a kid, but that's the most.
Well, what's your thoughts then?
Like it a lot, and actually, the one thing I found in the liner notes, because there was something I was trying to put my ear to and couldn't. So when I jumped on the liner notes and found it, I dug it. Here's where the change works. Tommy used to do this in the bars as well. Jack Blades' son, Colin, showed Tommy a Johnny Resnick tuning. I can't remember if it was Drop C or what, that Tommy really liked. So he tried it on this song to make it more introspective and a little darker. And a little darker is right, because it's not a dark version. It's not a dark song.
No, not by any stretch.
But knowing that and listening to it, this works. So I can't speak to the purists who like, I've been an Orleans fan since. Okay, well, cool.
Well, I don't know if there are any. I'm not sure.
Oh, just checking.
This was the album where they're all naked on the cover. So
now that I remember.
Well, yeah. Well, it was the 70s, so it was all
exactly
cool.
Right. But that change works for me. It does sound cool. I think it was a smart move. It made it interesting. I'm not saying the original wasn't interesting, but that to me was.
Are you saying though that this came out in 75?
Yeah.
But you mentioned them Tommy playing it in the bars?
Yeah.
Well, what did he did? I'm not doubting you, but maybe that's that overlap period before he joined Styx, when he was in
like a couple of weeks, because he joined in 75, so he couldn't have been doing bars that long.
Well, don't forget he'd been several bands in Alabama, so he'd been around. But maybe, it couldn't have been very long, but they must have played
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
That's all right. Maybe a bar they played.
A bar.
And Tommy didn't forget.
Exactly. You always remember your first.
Well, the Japanese bonus track, I have not heard this at all.
I have. It works no matter what from Badfinger. It works. I wish they would have put this on the album and gotten rid of I'm a Rock. Doing their version of No Matter What from Badfinger. It's faithful and well done. Great vocals, of course. The correct instrumentation. This is another one where it's not a complex song, but to get the instrumentation and the vocals correct and capture that era, it's not easy. I was a sound engineer way before before I grew up and had my first career. I went to school to be a sound engineer, so I know how back in the technology of the 70s is the stuff I learned on the 70s and the 80s, even though I learned the trade in the 90s. But I learned in actually the old Chess Studios in Chicago, got converted into the Audio Technology Center for Columbia College, and that's where I learned. I went to Columbia and got my degree there. And so I was mixing in the old chess rooms, which was an honor.
How cool is that? Yeah. Rolling Stones were in those rooms.
Yes, that was an honor.
And of course, tons of many blues artists, but the Stones went there and they did a lot of recording over there.
Yeah, you could feel it in those rooms, man. They were.
I bet. What an experience!
Good times.
But you talk about the technology, and I mentioned California Dreamin' and the whole reverb drenched, those big reverb tanks or whatever they use, those reverb. What do they call those in the studio?
Even as simple as a tube amp. This is not an easy sound. I mean, these days, click a button. But even in 07, you're trying to replicate sounds that at that time were not just there. Oh, I want to sound like this. That wasn't there. You had to get a little creative. And I worked in film sound after doing the studio work at Columbia. I went and did some film sound for a while. So we were doing nothing but recreating sounds from ADR and Foley work for film and TV. So you want to talk about getting creative, trying to make sounds sound like other things, but trying to recreate those and process those effects.
Right.
That is not easy. So to capture in all these songs, that's a project.
That's a project. And like I said, all these songs are so iconic. They have a certain stamp of the sound is just like I don't know. It's like capturing lightning in a bottle,
Yes.
Now everything, it's all Pro Tools. Everything's like I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
Which I just know. Pro Tools, actually, I graduated in 95. So from 93 to 95, I was working on one of the earlier versions. And I was both cutting actual, razor blade cutting analog tape. And then I had a different class in a different building. And I'd be learning 4-track, 4-channel Pro Tools. So at the very
that's the thing, back in the 60s and the 70s, it's still all analog. You're not putting in some kind of patch or some kind of
you can't click on do. If you make your edits, you better be damn sure that's where your edit's going to be, because you're cutting through 4, 8, 2, 4, 8, or 24 tracks of music. You better be damn sure you know where you're cutting.
But everything had a sound. Everything had a signature. Now everything just sounds the same. There's no unique stamp anymore.
There's no warmth.
Well, they could probably it's all computer too. I mean, I think it's opened up recording. Of course, look at that. Well, it's put all the studios out of business and everybody can do it now on their laptop. It is what it is.
Whether or not they should.
But I'm just saying, there was just something about the 70s, hell, even the 80s, though. Things are starting to get kind of,
Yeah.
But the 60s and the 70s, golden era as far as I'm concerned. But no matter what, you think that should have been replaced? That should have they could have put.
I wish it could have gone hand in hand. I would have liked to have seen rock and roll continue almost on a parallel course.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah.
As opposed to the evolution, I would have liked to have seen both continue and see where each would have gone.
Sure.
You know, I'm going to see Pearl by the time this airs, but I'm going to see Pearl Jam tomorrow night. I've waited 30 years for that.
See, I've never saw Pearl Jam.
Yeah. I was at Columbia when I got into them, when I was at Lewis, even before I went to that school. So we're talking like right before they broke. I had a chance to go see them opening for Soul Asylum like 2 weeks before 10 broke. And I'm like, because I was a big Soul Asylum fan back then. And nah, I won't go to U of I this week. I'll go next week and somebody else will be playing. And next thing I know, hey, that's a good song. I think those guys were uh-oh. And then boom. Yeah. So I'm finally righting that wrong.
So I'm just curious, what would you give let's say we're going to rate this out of 10, Paul. What would you rate this? Well, that's what we always do on this program. I usually rate things out of 5, but everybody does that out of 10 scale on these channels for some reason. And well, we're going to go out of 10. I mean, the reviews for this, let's say All Music, they gave it 3.5 stars, which I think's okay. I mean, All Music gave Hallucination 3 out of 5, which I think, I don't know if I agree. That's a whole other show, but they rate this even better. So what would you rate this out of 10? I'm just curious.
9.
Holy crap. Really?
They went to such, even when it doesn't work for me on a purely subjective level, I'm a Rock and a couple of the other ones I mentioned, they still at least went for it. So A, that takes guts. B, what the soundscapes they recreated, that is not easy. No. They brought whole eras into this music. Mm-hmm. These aren't just, oh, we dig this song, so we're going to do our version of it. In California Dreamin', you hear 1966 in their version. It sounds like it was a 2007 version, but you recognize the 66 influence.
Totally get it. That
is not easy. That is not something you can throw a 4-track on, play it through your computer, and go for it. That takes production value. That takes effort. Mm-hmm. They made this album. This album wasn't just sit down, record this, put it out because we dig these songs. This is, let's cultivate this, make this, like, show what we love about these songs, not just the vocals, not just sing the amazing harmonies we can sing, but why do we love these songs? It's the mood. How do we create the mood? Okay, we don't have a Moog, so let's try this with a palm muted distorted guitar to get the same feel. There's thought behind that. There's creativity behind that. That's why 9 out of 10, because even if it didn't personally work for me, I see where they made the decisions they made. And the ones that do work are stellar.
Yeah, I would say I totally agree. I'm never a fan of these bands that do records like this. But if, Rush, I don't want to bring up Rush, but it was mixed. It's mixed. I get it. I understand.
My favorite band, that album did not necessarily work for me.
But I don't think that they put it out as a serious.
They did what they wanted, and they enjoyed it, and they had fun with it, and that's great. I'm not the authority. It doesn't matter what it says in the window. I'm no authority. I'm one fan, period. Mm-hmm. I don't represent. But that being, and I'm not dogging the album. There's some real gems, and the playing and the musicianship.
As always, top notch. Right. Playing and vocals on here are top notch. I'm gonna say I'd probably give this an 8. I would give it a 9 if they weren't cover versions, and I would have probably even rated higher if it was just them with 2 acoustic guitars with layered vocals, whatever they have to do to achieve that particular sound. Fine. I'm fine with that. just have someone play bass, and maybe if you need like some light drumming, that's fine too. But I like that stripped down thing. Okay. I think when you're doing anything like this, I love it. Tommy Shaw and Jack Blades, always bring it. Come on. It's great for cover versions. You can't go wrong here. It's a beautiful record. I think it's a crime that this album was released in 2007 and virtually no one knew about it. I don't think there was any promotion of this record. It pisses me off that it came out and no one knows. Like I said, I had to go to Discogs to get a copy of it because I'd been looking for it for years. It came out on VH1 Classic Records. Whatever that is, I didn't even know they put out records. I just don't get it. Why it wasn't promoted. What was Styx 2007? What sticks out? What was going on during that era? What, and any Night Rangers? Well, Night Ranger probably was just holding on by their. What was
They were
Night
doing
Ranger?
something. They were probably doing something.
Playing out.
Yeah,
but
they're probably doing something.
Do you have any idea why this had no promotion? Why this came out and there was virtually? Do you know anything about that?
I'm winging it here, but if both of their main bands were on hiatus or in between big albums or whatever, you nailed it. If they recorded it at their home studios and they produced it themselves, this probably didn't have any big on VH1 Classic Records. This sounds very self everything. Mm-hmm. So you're talking, you don't have the budget for, I didn't see any Shaw Blade shirts. Have you seen them? So we're talking not a lot of merch, not a lot of promo. The budget probably wasn't there. And they just kind of put it out like a pack. It's a cliche, but it's true.
And they probably VH1 said, well, we'll put it out.
Exactly.
I guess it's fine. I don't even remember. Did they ever really tour though? When
they
Hallucination,
did, I saw the tour dates. And the Chicago date was at like Joe's Sports Bar. So we're talking small venues.
Okay. So like that's what the videos are from
nowadays. Right. Yes. They're bar videos. And the band, I know I mentioned I'm going to see Pearl Jam, but 9 times out of 10, the bands that I love to go see now are playing the bar scenes now. Yeah. So I'm in heaven. All my favorite bands, hell, Letters to Cleo is doing a 30th anniversary of Aurora Borealis, and they're only playing 3 shows, but they're playing the Paradise Rock Club in Boston and someplace in Brooklyn. I'm not familiar with the venue.
Heck, Letters to Cleo. Look at you, Paul.
Oh,
you a big fan?
Huge.
I picked up a Letters to Cleo. I can't remember what CD it was, but I picked it up for $1. I used to have the first one. This is like, I can't remember which. It's kind of like an orange cover.
Go. And Stacey Jones back on drums for this. They're playing all of Aurora Borealis front to back, and Stacey's coming back for these shows. And last time he played with them was 20. Okay, I'll go to hell for not getting this right.
That's all right.
It was my first date with my late wife. So it was, matter of fact, just out of reach is I've got Stacy's sticks from that show.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. So that's why me missing this show is a real pisser.
Yeah.
well, am I a fan? I got Kay's handwriting here.
Jesus.
I got the stamps here, the Boston stamp there, the 4-leaf clover there. So, yeah, bit of a fan.
There you go. A fanboy right here, ladies and gentlemen. But that's okay. Yes. That's cool. Yeah. So anyway, we might as well wind this one up. But Paul will be back because we will be back with Todd Evans, and we're going to look at Men at Work. This will be posted by the time we do that show. So stay tuned. We will be looking at that Men at Work catalog, those Columbia albums. So Paul gives this record a 9. I give this an 8. Combined, that means it's good. Well worth seeking out if you can find one, for God's sakes. This pisses me off that it just went by the wayside. Heck, Even try to find a copy of Hallucination. I know that Rock Candy, that the UK label, has reissued it. I don't know if it's still in print, but they didn't touch, Influence, but they did touch Hallucination. So
they did a cover of Sweet Emotion as well, and I never did find out where it was from. Someone on YouTube had slapped Influence's cover on it. It's not from any version of Influence. So, but it is them.
Well, I
they
don't
also
know.
did 3-4 songs with Aerosmith. So Shut Up and Dance, I know they did with Aerosmith too. Forgot to mention that one.
I don't see that there was you've got Influence, yes. And the only thing that I see as far as singles and EPs and stuff, it was on Warner Brothers, and it was Hallucination, period. You can hardly find anything. It just seems so odd to me.
But like I said earlier, they always pop up. I mean, them, not just these releases, but they pop up where you're not expecting it. Jude Cole, which you and I have had conversations about, really underrated musician, disappeared. But if you listen to the song Worlds Apart, or Start the Car for that matter, the second the chorus kicks in, that's all Tommy and Jack. I mean, it's not to take away from Jude Cole's massive talent, but it's absolutely, it's like, there they are. You just know them the minute you hear them.
I get it. Well, I just looked up Influence, the Japanese, because it only came out on CD. This never got an LP release, which is fine. You take what you can get. It's not about the medium, kids. It's about the music. The cheapest you can get is like $53. It's not cheap. There aren't tons of copies floating around. I mean, that's a high price to pay to get no matter what, but I'm just saying. It's just kind of sad, There's 11 copies of it on Discogs, so there are copies available of the domestic VH1 classic record CD. So that's at least something. Before, you could hardly ever find them.
Yeah.
So they're out there. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll see a re-release. Maybe our video will inspire people to go out and see if they can get this record and give a listen. I haven't went to Spotify. It's probably on YouTube, but I haven't ventured out. I'm a physical media guy. So
am I.
Yeah, I can't help it. So it's there. We both recommend you check it out.
Absolutely.
It's well worth seeking out. Anything else to add, Paul, before we wrap this dog up?
No, I think we're good. Can't wait for Men at Work and whatever other crazy things we decide to dig into.
Okay.
And you know where to find me, over at Rush Fans, and on Instagram, Kilroy042. So my usual goofiness and my spirit of aloha, but that being said, always Rush Fans.
There you go. It all comes back to Rush. All right, Paul, I thank you. It's been a great discussion. We will see you on Men at Work. For everybody out there, please like, subscribe, check out Rush Fans. Paul's over there. Check out his work. But until next time, we will see you. Have a good one.